Now, I know Pastor Penny's not shy about her age, but she just turned 29, so just turned 29. So we're going to go and make a transition from the normal of someone celebrating a birthday to the strange and bizarre of the Bible. This series we're in is all about these strange, maybe somewhat weird stories in the Bible that we're just plucking out, we're sharing, and we're trying to figure out what can we learn from some of these stories that maybe are just crazy and we don't even know why they're in the Bible. So I want to start by sharing with you a recently strange moment that I had in my life. I was thinking about this, I was like, man, what is something crazy that I've seen happen? I was thinking way back when I was young. I mean, I grew up in Louisiana, so there's always got to be something crazy going on there. And then God reminded me of something recently that happened just probably 2 or 3 months ago. Me and some guys were at a place where there was a pond, and we went out to the pond, and one of the guys had been out there just a little bit before we had, and he's hollering at us, come out here, you got to see this, come out here, hurry, hurry, hurry. Well, there's a goose that is out on the pond, and the goose is on the water, flapping its wings, trying to get up out of the water, but it can't get up out of the water. And we're like, what's going on? Why can't this goose get up? And the other guy's like, it's because a snapping turtle has his foot. Now, I love the water, love to fish, love the outdoors. I'm from the country. I have never seen a goose getting its foot eaten by a snapping turtle that was so big, the goose could not get out of the water. We tried to scare it over to the shore because, hey, listen, hope this doesn't hurt anybody's feelings. I love animals and I love geese. Not worth jumping in the water to go save that goose for me. Had it been one of my kids, I'd have thought about it. No. I would have gone and saved my kids. So we're trying to help, trying to get this goose. The goose is getting tireder and tireder. We thought, because the goose wouldn't come to shore or near shore, it was out in the middle, we thought this goose was going to just get so tired it was going to just lay over and drown. But finally, the goose broke free, and I saw that goose 2 days later walking in our parking lot, and its foot was all mangled up from where the snapping turtle had got it. Crazy, wild, strange story. And since we're talking about a goose in a pond, there's another animal that lives in the water that I want to read this story today, and I want us to see something wild that happens with this other animal that lives in the water. So we're going to read in Matthew chapter 17. I'm going to read verses 24 through 27. This is going to be the crux of our story. This is going to be where we learn and gather some stuff today. Matthew 17, verse 24. After Jesus and his disciples arrived in Capernaum, the collectors of the 2 drachma, I love that word, it sounds German even though it's not, drachma, temple tax, came to Peter and asked, doesn't your teacher pay the temple tax? Yes, he does, he replied. When Peter came into the house, Jesus was the first to speak. What do you think, Simon? He asked. From who do the kings of the earth collect duty and taxes? From their own children or from others? From others, Peter answered. Then the children are exempt, Jesus said to him. But so that we may not cause offense, go to the lake and throw out your line. Take the first fish you catch, open its mouth, and you will find a 4 drachma coin. Take it and give it to them for my tax and yours. What in the world? I mean, if I'm catching fish that the first one has money in its mouth, I'm going to be out there a long time. I'm going to keep fishing, and I'm going to keep fishing, and I'm going to keep fishing. I know Jesus said just the first one, but I just got to test and see if there's more fish with money. This is a miracle, right? Anybody here caught a fish with a Benjamin in its mouth or anything? Money? Raise your hand. I want to go fishing with you if you have. Nobody. This is miraculous. But this is one of those miracles that's just odd to me. Because when I read about other miracles in the Bible, there's a lot of sweet emotional moments. There's a mom or a father that's calling out for their child to be healed and to be saved. There's other people going that have limbs that can't see. Their limbs are messed up and God is healing them. Jesus is healing them. All these things that as a miracle, it makes sense. It's affecting people in a very positive way. What in the world, why in the world did this story get stuck here about a fish with money in its mouth and Peter's catching the fish just to pay a temple tax? Is there anything that we can learn from this story? Here's the question I want us to leave here today with. Here's the question I want us to walk through this week, next few weeks, next month. The question I want us to marinate on is, what are we fishing for? What are we fishing for? You know, I don't think Peter should be the only one catching fish today. And he shouldn't be the only one catching fish with money in his mouth. So what I want to do is I want to take you all fishing. I was going to try to fit you in my car, but there's too many of you, so we're going to take a train fishing. And y'all going to ride with me. Don't worry. I have all the supplies. I got all the bait that we need. We're going to hit a few different bodies of water. I got all the poles. But you're going to hop in with me, and we're going to go on a fishing trip. Because I believe in this story, there's some fish that will give us some gold nuggets of life that might help us as we walk through our life. So come on fishing. And as we arrive at this first body of water, I just want to let you know, the fish that I mostly catch in this body of water is the gotcha fish. The gotcha fish. In this story, it says these Jewish leaders were collecting the temple tax. Now, the temple tax was not anything dealing with the Romans. It was to keep up with the temple, to allow the temple to continue to function and operate. But this was Jewish people going around asking other Jewish people who are above the age of 20, have you paid your annual temple tax? So they walk up, and I love the question that they ask that reminds me and shows us that in this pond is the gotcha fish. They said, doesn't your teacher pay the temple tax? I love how other translations break it out because they take that contraction and they make it a little more shady. They say, does not your teacher pay the temple tax? They're not asking just because it's a duty. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to find out if Jesus, this guy who's been saying a bunch of stuff that sounds very off and different and weird than what we've learned as Jewish people, he sounds like he's trying to change the game and change the way things are going. I'm going to see if I can catch him, if I can go, gotcha. He claims that he obeys God, but he's not even willing to obey the rules and the laws that are governing right here for the temple of God. He is not willing to pay. I think very often we are around people and people do something and we can walk through our life trying to set them up to say, gotcha. See, I knew you were somebody that didn't tell the truth. I knew you were somebody that hurt other people. I knew you were somebody that didn't care about me. And it's even harder when we've been hurt by people. Sometimes we will actually set people up to hurt us just so we can stay comfortable in our pain. Sometimes we put it out there like bait and go, please just take this so I can say, gotcha. You're exactly how I thought you were. You're so self-centered. All you care about is yourself. You're just selfish. I knew you were going to treat me like this. You see this a lot in marriage. We love to play the gotcha game in marriage. In marriage, we are out fishing in this pond, catching gotcha fish all day. See, you didn't turn the toilet paper with the toilet paper over. It's under. I knew you didn't care about me. You know what? You squeeze the toothpaste from the middle and not the end. You don't care about my life. You have no concern about me. You're just in there watching your TV, playing your games, doing your thing. You're just back there reading your book. Gotcha. You're not giving time to me. You remember we used to go hang out and do stuff all together? You were my greatest fan, my greatest cheerleader. You don't even cheer me on anymore in life. I tell you a story, you don't even tell me, man, I'm so proud of you, honey. Gotcha. Same thing with kids. If you have kids, it is so easy as a parent. I'm a parent of 3, so I'm speaking from real life, and I've done this. It's so easy for me to look at my kids and see all the stuff that they don't do right, all the times that they don't listen to me, and to go, gotcha, you're doing it again, instead of looking at the things they're doing well and encouraging them with that. My son, my oldest son, just turned 14 last week. Friday, he had some friends over. He had 2 friends over, and they played video games for 3 hours straight. And I was taking the kids home. Noah was riding with me. Now, my oldest son, what you need to understand about him is he loves to talk. He gets that from Jalea, not me. If you know Jalea, you know that's a lie. If you know me, you know that's a lie also. I'm the talker in the family. God has had to work on my filter for talking and teach me to just be quiet sometimes. But I'm 43 years old. He's 14. However, I would love for him to be where I am at 43 and not go through all that learning like I had to go through and just arrive at knowing when to be quiet, knowing when to ask questions. So we talk with him a lot about, hey, man, when you're around other friends and people, don't just rattle on about video games. He has a trapdoor mind, and what I love about him is that kid has a memory like nobody's business, just spouting out information. Ask them questions. Engage with them. Don't just talk, and don't interrupt them. So we're riding home. Now, this is going to take about an hour worth of driving to get both of his friends home because they live on 2 different parts of the continent. So we're driving, and they're all talking. And there are a number of times where Noah gets in his rhythm of just talking. A few times he's interrupted them. He's sitting in the front passenger seat. There's a few times where I just do this to him to let him know, like, calm yourself. And then there's one moment I do that, and he does a very good job of redirecting, and because he interrupted his friend talking, and he goes back and asks him and brings him back to where his friend was talking in the story. Now, this was the last friend we were dropping off, and I was ready to say, gotcha, you did it again. You're over there yak, interrupting your friends. How do you think your friend felt when you interrupted him? I was ready to just get the gotcha fish on him. But then as I was dropping this other kid off, God said, Michael, don't say gotcha. I want you to point out the thing he did well when he brought the story back, even after he had interrupted his friend. The gotcha fish is one that we love to catch. The gotcha fish is something that makes us feel comfortable. The gotcha fish is our way of saying, I'm going to really see if you really support me. I'm going to really see if you really believe in me. That's all they were doing with this temple tax. They were going, we're going to get you because we're going to see if you really support this temple thing. This thing where we go and worship. We're going to see if you support that because we've heard these inklings that you feel a different way about the temple, and maybe there's something new coming, and it seems like you think you're the Messiah, but we don't think you're the Messiah, the one to come for us that we're looking for. So we're going to see if you're paying your tax just so we can say, you see, he's not who he says he is. Gotcha. I love Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 through 5, because it sort of takes this gotcha fish and encourages us to kill it and not catch it anymore. Says this in the Message paraphrase. Don't pick on people, jump on their failures, criticize their faults, unless, of course, we want the same treatment. That critical spirit has a way of boomeranging. It's easy to see a neighbor's smudge or to see a smudge on your neighbor's face and be oblivious to the ugly sneer on your own. Do you have the nerve to say, let me wash your face for you, when your own face is distorted by contempt? It's this whole traveling roadshow mentality all over again. And I love this, playing a holier than thou part instead of just living our part. Wipe that ugly sneer off our own face, and then we might be fit to offer a washcloth to our neighbor. This paraphrase, some of you might be more familiar with some of the other translations that say, get the log out of your own eye before you remove the speck of dust in your neighbor's eye. It's all about looking at them and going, gotcha, see? I knew that was a vice for you. Gotcha, I knew you would stumble and fall. Gotcha, I knew you wouldn't live up to what I wanted you to live up to. The gotcha fish. We now have a stringer full of gotcha fish. There's no more catching in this pond. So let's move on to another body of water. Hop on the train with me. Now, as we arrive at this next body of water, I want to prepare you because there's a different kind of fish that bites on the bait you're going to put in the water. So the fish that we're probably going to catch mostly in this body of water is the offensive fish. The offensive fish. Jesus makes an extremely powerful statement. He says a bunch of stuff to Peter about the kings and the sons and who they collect taxes from. And then he says, but so that we may not cause offense. Offense is a very powerful tool that the enemy uses to get us offended. And there's a receiving side of us being offended that we're called to as believers and Christians to stand up against and not allow ourselves to be offended. No matter what anybody does, don't move to a place of bitterness and offense because then we begin to destroy ourselves. Instead, the Bible tells us to walk into forgiveness. It's a commandment to walk in that forgiveness. So that's the receiving side. So Michael, as a believer, am I only supposed to just be the one that's the bigger person and say, you know what, they offended me, but I'm just not going to allow it to be offensive. I'm going to move on. I'm going to get better. Nah, because Jesus himself said, in order to not be offensive. So that tells me, if I have a relationship with God, not only do I have a responsibility not to allow offense to pull me out of a church, to pull me out of a relationship, and just to be the little seed that causes something to grow that destroys my life and friendships, but I have a responsibility to pay attention to how I treat other people as to not be offensive. I remember, probably 6 or 8 years ago, we used to do staff retreats with our church staff. We were a little bit smaller then, and we would go on these retreats. And the purpose of the retreat, the main purpose was, the two main purposes were to go talk about next year's calendar, look at the things we want to keep doing, stop doing, and all that. So some work stuff, but also we always had fun and had a good time. So it was great to just build some community amongst our staff and the relationships. Well, we had this young lady, a good friend of mine. We actually treated each other like brother and sister. Her name was Megan Pugh. And at the time, Megan was over our events. And Megan would plan all these games while we were on the staff retreat. She was really good at that stuff. And Megan's the type of person that Megan has the sweetest, softest voice. And sometimes she would correct you, and you wouldn't know it till you were walking away, and you were like, oh, dang, I think she just told me off. Like, I didn't even know it. Like, she's so sweet and tender and just soft-spoken. But Megan knew, Pastor Penny always called Megan the one who could drop the velvet hammer. Like it was velvet. So you're like, oh, that feels so great. Oh my gosh, she just told me like what I need to learn. I had no idea. Megan had designed all these games that we split up into teams because we have a competitive staff. And we're playing these games, and Megan had told us before we started, hey, all these different games we're going to do, they have different point systems, blah, blah, blah. I don't really know why we set it up like that, but it was how it was set up. We go through and play all these games. The team I was on, we won at least 3 more games than anybody else. So she's about to announce the winner, and I'm over there just smiling. I'm about to get that gift card, son. This is going to be mine because we just killed y'all. Like, y'all had no chance. And she announced the winners, and it wasn't us. Now, here's what you need to understand about me. Oh, Lord. I don't get too riled up or on a soapbox about much. I'll get on a soapbox about marriage and family and stuff, but I usually will keep most of my thoughts to myself, especially if I feel like they're just trifling and no point in them. But I do not like when I play a game and the rules and the prize of how that is being determined, who gets the prize, when those things are unjust and they're not fair across the board. It's like going, hey, we're going to play cornhole today. They're going to use cornhole bags. You're going to use a 25-pound concrete dry cement bag. Let's play cornhole. That's not fair. There's nothing just about that. I'm throwing a 25-pound concrete bag, and you're over there throwing a cornhole bag? No way, that's not fair. Mine can't even get in the hole. Well, this made me irate. I was mad, and I didn't do a great job of holding my tongue. I don't remember how much, or I don't know if I think I did an okay job, but Megan definitely knew that I was upset. I went to Megan and I said, Megan, this was so unjust. You gave more points to these games that were harder than some of the other games. We won 3 games more. Why in the world did we not win? And I'm just mad, mad, mad. Just being offensive for the sake of being offensive in what I thought. Now, had I taken that to a court of law, I probably would have had some just and some rightness in what I was thinking. I wasn't way off. I wasn't just being a goofball to be a goofball. There was some truth that I could stand on, but that wasn't the point. The point is we were there to have fun with our staff, to play a game, and yes, it's competitive, and yes, we laugh. It didn't need to be ruined by my offensive character and coming to Megan and making her feel bad about this game. Jesus in this story, he has a right to not pay the temple tax. The whole reason he asked Simon Peter this line of questions was because Peter also should have understood when Jesus finished the questioning that he had every right legitimately not to pay this temple tax. You see, what's happened in chapter 16 is that God has been trying to get his disciples to understand who he is. that he's the Messiah, the Son of the God, and he's going to die for them. And he finally gets to this moment in chapter 16 where his disciples are around. And he says, hey, who do people say that I am? They start throwing all this stuff. Then he looks at them and he says, who do you say I am? And you got to love Simon Peter. Because, man, no matter how many times he messed up, he kept opening his mouth and going for it. And he got this one right. He said, you are the Son of the living God. You are the Messiah. And Jesus said, you're correct. We move on to the beginning of chapter 17 before this story I read. And Jesus takes these three guys, Simon, Peter, James, and John, took them all up on a mountain. When they were on that mountain, it said Jesus shone like the sun. He was transfigured into who he spiritually was. He shone like the sun, this bright light. And then Moses and Elijah, these guys, these big hitters from the Old Testament, they showed up. And then check out what happened. Just if it wasn't crystal clear, if Peter didn't have it, God himself spoke and said, this is my son with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him and do what he says. Then as they're walking down the mountain, Jesus begins to talk to them about the Son of Man is going to die for them. Then he goes to all the disciples and tell them, Peter's got it at this point. If Peter doesn't understand that he's the Son of God, then Peter's just lost it. But we're getting near the end of Jesus' life. Peter understands. So when Jesus says in this story, hey, who do the kings of the earth tax? Do they tax their children or do they tax other people? When Peter says they tax other people, Jesus says, so their children are exempt. The point he was making is, Peter, you know that the tabernacle way back in the Old Testament and the temple now, whose house is it? It was built for God. It's his house. You know that I'm the Son of God, so I'm a child of God. So I don't have to pay this tax. But even in the midst of this truth, we are not going to be offensive. In Romans chapter 14, Paul is writing to the Roman church, and there's a mix of Jews and Gentiles. And he's talking to them about a couple specific things. He's talking to them about what they eat. Because you see, Jews had a very strict diet. They were almost vegetarian. And the Gentiles just ate whatever they wanted. And so there were some challenges at the beginning where some Jews were saying, hey, if you're going to follow this Jesus thing, you got to change your eating habits. And Paul's talking to them and saying, hey, look, if there are people that want to eat everything, fine. If they do it unto the Lord and thank him, cool. If there are people that want to be vegetarian, let them be vegetarian. If they're thanking the Lord, let it be. Then he goes on to say, hey, some of y'all think there's a specific day that's holy, and some of y'all think that every day is holy. If that's your conviction and you're believing God and that's what you see as holy, then let it be. And then he says this in Romans chapter 14, verses 12 through 13. Yes, each of us will give a personal account to God. So let's stop condemning each other. Decide instead to live in such a way that you will not cause another believer to stumble and fall. When Jesus said, let's not be offensive and let's give, he was trying not to be a stumbling block. And I thought about it. I was like, what today? What's something today? Maybe that Jesus, if he were here, he would point to Romans 14 and say, y'all got to get this together. As believers, y'all got to get this together. And I thought about it long and hard. And this is what I came up with. When I read Romans 14, I thought about this right here. And I didn't think about this from a right or wrong standpoint of it's right to wear a mask and wrong not to, or right to not wear it and wrong to wear it. But I've heard so many people giving so much chatter to this. And maybe nobody here, probably people at our central campus, not anybody at this campus. And this, what I'm about to say is not for people that don't have a relationship with God. This is strictly if we're trying to live our life in the way that God wants to live, and we're tired of catching the offensive fish, and we're tired of walking in that and chewing on it. It doesn't matter what we think about whether it's right or not, because both sides have enough scientific and medical proof to feel like they're in the right. So let's just assume that we're both in the right. But as a believer, if I think wearing this is annoying and I can't breathe and I get hot and it's bothersome, and you know what? I have rights. I'm an American. I can do what I want to do. Don't we love to say that? And I walk up to the food line to go get some food, and it says, to enter the store, you're required to wear a mask, but I know nobody from the law is going to come put me in jail. I'm not going to get arrested. I'm not going to get a fine. And I just say, psh, that mask ain't doing anything. Forget your mask. I'm doing what I want to do, and I'm not wearing a mask. It's the attitude. It's just being offensive to people for the sake of being offensive. If I go to my friend's house, and for them, keeping social distance and wearing a mask is important, either just because it is, they feel strongly about it, or because they have a medical condition, I don't need to barge up in their house and start loving all of them. Man, come on, get over it. You don't have faith. This is not about faith. This doesn't determine my faith. This does not determine my salvation, my relationship with God. This is nothing. We just get rid of it. If you feel like you need to wear a mask, wear it and stand in God on wearing it. If you don't feel like you need to wear a mask, then do that and stand in God on it. Stop putting it on social media. Stop talking about it. But we need to respect other people and stop being offensive for the sake of what we think is right. Because it's not kingdom. There's nothing kingdom about this thing at all. Nothing. I love Romans 12. I don't know how to transition from that except for to read the Bible. Romans 12 is good. Romans 12 is like my favorite. If you want to read about like what the tenets of Christianity and how, just read Romans. Romans 12 is my favorite chapter in the Bible. And verse 18 says something very powerful. And it speaks to this whole attitude that we carry ourselves. If it is possible, everything, every effort, we've tried everything, if it is possible, as far as it depends on me, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Stop catching the offensive fish. Stop making people see your offensive fish. Stop showing them what you caught that day. We need to get over it. We need to check our attitude. If it's not just the truth of the Bible, and it's really a truth of a conviction or something, then we need to be careful not to cause our brothers and sisters to stumble just because we believe something. If it's not about relationship with God and changing our life and causing us to be better and walk in the things that God has us to walk in, then it's really not worth sharing our opinion to make someone else move back from God. You see, I believe that Jesus knew if he didn't pay that tax, that those leaders would go, gotcha. And later on when he died and they realized he was the Messiah, they would be hung up on what he didn't do, and they wouldn't trust what he did do and what could be done in their life. You see, I feel like he knew there was more at stake. He wasn't going to give them another piece of line, another piece of bait to take and use to talk their way out of who he was and what he came to do. The gotcha fish, what are we fishing for? The offensive fish, what are we fishing for? It's midday, and if you like to fish, you usually know midday you don't catch many fish. But don't worry, y'all. I know a place we can catch some fish. 12 o'clock, midday. Grab a sandwich. We're going on a ride. We show up at this next body of water, and I will say this. You've caught these other two fish, and they've been a good fight. You've caught them, periodically here and there. But I got to say, you need to be prepped, because this body of water has a particular fish in it. And the reason why you could catch these fish at midday, noon, the worst time to fish, the reason why you could catch them is because it's probably the most aggressive fish out there. The fish we're going to catch in this pond is the self-fish. The self-fish. Kind of sounds like another word, but I don't know what word that is. We're going to catch the self-fish. Now, when I read this story, there's nothing that really stands out to me as anybody necessarily being selfish, except the tax collector people. But there's this little nuance that happens in the story. It says, when Peter said, yes, my teacher does pay that tax, I don't know that Peter was really saying that out of really being sure whether or not Jesus paid that tax or had paid it that year. I think he just said yes to say yes. So when he walks in the house, when you read the scripture, it says that when he came into the house, that Jesus was the first to speak. And I think that's very important, because I think Jesus knew that if he didn't talk first, that Peter was going to talk out of himself first. And so he had to cut Peter off, and he had to start asking him a bunch of questions to get him out of what he was about to respond to from a selfish standpoint and from his viewpoint. And you see, I think the great thing about this story and this miracle was that Jesus was trying to solidify his truth in Peter. He was really trying to get Peter to understand that I'm about to leave, and I really need you to understand as a Jewish leader, as a Jewish person, that there are some things that need to shift. And in order to understand this, we need to understand how the implementation of the temple tax started. Way back in Exodus, when you read chapter 30, verses 11 through 16, you can go back and check it out yourself. God tells Moses, he says, Moses, I want you to count all the people. And when you count each one, if they're over the age of 20, they need to pay this tax for the tabernacle to help keep up with it. And all of them need to pay it as a ransom. They need to pay this tax as a ransom for themselves, and if they pay the tax when you count them, then none of the plagues that came on Egypt will come on them. Then he goes on later, and God refers to this tax as the atonement money. The atonement money. Atonement is this word that we might not be familiar with. All it means is that this money is being paid to reconcile the relationship of the people back to who God is. That's what atonement means. It means something given to reconcile, a price paid to reconcile back to God. Now, he did it that one time, and then for many years, they didn't pay any more temple tax. Until you get around the time of Nehemiah or a little after, it became an annual tax that started happening and being taken and collected for the temple. You see, what I think Jesus was doing right here is that when he sent Peter out to catch that fish for the money to pay, you'll notice he told him he caught a 4 drachma coin. It's only 2 drachma per person. And he said to him, Peter, this is to pay for you and me. What he was trying to get Peter to understand was that Peter, for too long, the Jewish people, just because they're Jewish, felt like they had access to God. And they've been waiting on a Messiah, but they don't recognize me as that. You see, it used to be just because you called yourself a Jew that you had relationship with God. But Peter, here's what I need you to understand. We're going from this group kind of sonship and daughtership to now an individual, personal son and daughter relationship with me. So now, in order to have a connection with God, it's not just because you're Jew. It's not just because you were born in America. It's not just because we show up to church every weekend. But it's a price that I'm paying for you. The Bible says Jesus made atonement. This temple tax was for atonement. Jesus is saying, no longer, Peter, do you have to trust in yourself. No longer do you have to trust in the way you handle yourself, your identity, you carry yourself. Now your identity will be found in me because I've paid the price. The old way says you have to pay a price to have connection with God. The new way says, I, Jesus, am paying the price for you so that you can have that connection with God. If you will, stand to your feet with me. As you stand to your feet, I want you to think about that. Because I've been taking you on a fishing trip. And we've learned about all these different fish. Things that are holding us down. Things that are holding us back. Things that are challenging. And here's what Jesus says. He says, I don't care how many times you've caught those fish and they've let you at a place where you felt like you were still lacking. He says, now I want you to go fish. And when you cast out, I have a price that I've paid for you. And if you choose to open that fish's mouth, you'll get the reward that I have for you. Do you know all it takes to start a relationship with God now is a choice? I could be a Jew or a Gentile or from Gastonia. It doesn't matter. It's a choice. It's individual. If you're a man in here, you can be a son just by making that choice of the Most High God. If you're a woman in here, you can be a daughter of the Most High God. Your inheritance changes, and it begins to shift the way that we walk through our life and we live our life. It doesn't get easy, but it gets more clear. We feel peace in times where we couldn't feel peace. There are times we're alone, and we finally can feel the presence, and we're not lonely anymore. If you will, close your eyes. And I just want to ask you one question. What are you fishing for? What are you fishing for? I want you to really think about that in your head and answer that. That's why I have you close your eyes. I want you to look at yourself and just answer that. Have you been fishing trying to get everything right? Do you have the rod and reel in your hand? Have you been catching the wrong fish and it's been destroying your life? Well, today you can make a choice to change that. And it's your choice, not mine. But I'm going to invite you to respond to God. God is asking you, what are you fishing for? And he's saying, if you're not fishing for him, his son paid the price. And you can accept that today. If you want to be a child of God because you choose to have that relationship and you accept that gift that Jesus paid that price, I just want you can just lift your hand up, and once you lift it up, you can put it back down if you want that relationship. I see your hand, sir. Thank you for raising your hand. I see your hand, sir, back here. I see your hand, sir. Thank you, ma'am. I see your hand. Thank you for raising your hand. I see your hand back there, sir. I'm going to pray a prayer. The Bible talks about how powerful our words are. So I want you, if you raise your hand, to say this prayer loud. If you're here and you have a relationship with God, let's encourage them and join in and say this loud, hear yourself. Let's just try to make a booming voice, one booming voice in here. Repeat this prayer after me. God, I love you. Thank you for loving me. You sent your son to die for me, to pay a price that I couldn't afford. And I believe it, and I receive it. When he raised from the dead, now I can be raised to new life. No longer will I catch these other fish, but I will look to you. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Hey, y'all give it up for those people that raised their hand. Hey, so if you're here today and you made that decision, or maybe you're just new in your relationship with God, we have this cool free book. It's called 10 Steps to Christ. I couldn't remember last weekend how many steps it was, but I found out this week. I did my homework. 10 Steps to Christ. Go out to our Guest Central and get that. If it's your first time, go out there, scan the QR code, or get your gift. We want to put that in your hands. If you're here and you've been coming for a while and you're like, man, I want to make this place my home, we would love for you to join us and be a member. Right after this, you can exit out and go to our classroom over to the left, and we're going to go through our Grow and Serve track. If you missed our Connect party last week, don't worry. There's no specific order that makes us right. Just get involved and start to take the next step. Here's why we want people to take that next step. Because it allows us to get to know people. It allows us to find our purpose. And next Sunday, we are making room for more by adding our 9:15 service. We're launching that service. And so just like you've come and you've experienced God here, there's a lot of people that serve and get involved to make this happen. And we do stuff at Freedom House as a team. It's not a one-person show or a one-group show. It's something we all do together. If this is your home, get connected. We're also having a big Make Room for More after party. We're going to have fall foods. We're going to have, people are going to have, pumpkin painting. Bring your own pumpkin. I was trying to think of soups. What do we eat in the fall? Like soups and chili and crock pots. Thank you. Make a crock pot dish. If you want to make a main crock pot dish or a main dish, go out to Guest Central and sign your name. We're going to just hang out afterwards and have a fun just party, getting together and just celebrating what God is doing with this church and in your life. So if I missed anything, who cares? Let's go have a good week and let's celebrate next weekend. Y'all are dismissed.